Hello students, I am Yashika and today in this video we will be talking about 50 most important questions for your IAT exam 2026 for biology. So let's begin. So the first question that we have here, right. So the first question says that action potential is a phenomena which works on the principle of potential build-up and breakdown due to ionic and voltage gradients, and action potential was generated by a weak impulse. Which among the following option is not the possible change in the axon during the propagation of action potential? Now whenever you look at an axon membrane, right, we generally have sodium here and we have potassium here. So whenever a stimulus, whenever you give a stimulus, what happens? Your voltage gated sodium channels, they open and your sodium goes inside your axon. So there is influx of sodium, right? This is the first thing that happens. After that, your once your stimulus has moved further, what happens? To repolarize the membrane, your potassium channels, your voltage gated potassium channels, they open, right? They will open so that they can do what? They can repolarize your membrane. You can bring it back to your resting state. Right? So let's look at the options. Sodium channels will open for action potential to propagate. This is correct. Now they have asked you which of the possibilities are not, actually accurate. So first option is correct. Second, they are saying potassium channels will open to repolarize the membrane after the action potential has been generated. This is also correct. We just saw that. Then it says thick axon without myelination is the most efficient axon for action potential. Now this is incorrect. Why? Because your axons, when they are myelinated, all right, when they are myelinated, your signal transfer is actually faster, right? Your signal can transfer a bit faster. Thick axons, yes, thick axons, but if it has no myelin, so my signal will shift like this. But if it is myelinated, my signal is going to have a bigger jumps. So having a myelinated thick axon, it is more favorable. So C option is incorrect because here they have said without myelination. Okay? So my C option is incorrect here. Moving to the second question. So the second question says that in pre-industrial period in England, peppered moths had light coloration which effectively camouflaged them against light colored trees. So first we had what? We had your light moth. They were able to camouflage with light trees, and on trees you even have lichens, right? Your pollution indicators. So now they have said that during industrialization, many lichens died because we know lichens, they are what? They are your pollution indicators. They are not able to grow in areas that are very high in pollution. So lichens, they die. So once your lichens have died, your dark colored moths were predominantly seen, right? Why? Because once your lichens were, say suppose if this is my tree, this is a light tree, okay? On this light tree, if this is my tree color, okay, if this is my tree color, let's say. Now on this tree, this is my light tree. On this tree, if I draw a butterfly, a moth of yellow color, it is very hard to distinguish it, right? It is very hard to distinguish it. But on the other hand, okay, if I have a dark colored tree, okay, let's take blue. I don't have brown here. So if I have a very dark colored tree, right? This is my dark colored tree. Now this dark colored tree, in this dark colored tree, what happened? All the soot, the pollution, because of all these things, the lichens, they died, right? So the tree bark now became what? The tree bark became dark. Now on this dark colored tree, if I draw a butterfly, which is already dark, it is difficult to see, right? It is difficult to see the moth. But on this dark colored tree, now if I draw a light colored moth, you can easily distinguish it, right? But your dark colored moths are not visible. So this is an example of what? This is an example of your natural selection. This is an example of natural selection, that nature is actually naturally selecting your light colored moths over your dark colored trees and your dark colored moths on your light colored trees, right? So this is an example of what? This is an example of natural selection. So here this happened due to your natural selection, Okay, natural selection of dark colored moths which were initially present in fewer numbers. Okay, so coming to the third question. Now this is a very interesting question. Now it says a newborn baby was kept in a hospital with other babies. After checking his blood group, the baby got mixed up with other babies in the hospital. In order to confirm the correct baby, blood group of the parents were taken. Father, so your father, he was AB and your mother was B. Now since your mother is B, she can be either BB or BO also, right? She can be BB or BO. I'll do one thing. So she can be BB, right? Now father will make two alleles A and B. However, your mother, okay, since we don't know if she's homozygous or heterozygous, it's not mentioned in your question. So she can be either B, B or BO. Two possibilities. Right? You have what? You have two possibilities. Now, one thing that we know that he is homozygous Rh positive. He is what? Homozygous Rh positive. Or let's write it separately. Rh positive, positive. And your mother is what? She is Rh negative. Right? She is what? She is Rh negative. Now, if you see this, if you have to find the baby's what? If you have to find the baby's blood type or the blood group. If you just look at the RH is one positive and one negative. So the baby will be RH positive only, right? Baby is going to be RH positive only because you here will be expressing what? The dominant trait more. Okay? Now if you look at the blood type, the baby can either be AB, the baby can either be B, or the baby can either be A, right? AO, BB, AB or BO, right? But all these blood groups, one thing that you need to remember that your RH would be what? RH is going to be positive. So it's going to be AB positive, B positive, A positive. So these are the only three possibilities of the blood type that the baby has. So if you look at the option, the most so you can directly eliminate RH negative where RH is not given and O also. So the only appropriate option that is left here, that is your A, RH positive, which is this blood type of the child. Okay. Coming to your fourth question. Now fourth question says that flower of an unknown angiosperm plant were taken. It was seen the microspores inside the anther contain 12 chromosomes. So now your N, microspore inside the anther, that means N. We are talking about your haploid. N is given to as 12. Now they have asked, pollens were sprinkled on the stigma of the female flower of the plant, the aileron layer. Now aileron layer is part of what? It's part of your endosperm, and we know endosperm is 3N because here we see what? Here we see triple fusion, right? Your two polar nuclei plus your sperm. So here we see 3N. N is given 12, so 3N would be how much? 12 into 3, that is how much? It is 36. So how many chromosomes? You will have 36 chromosomes, right? Now in this question itself, if they would have asked you how many chromatids, then you will have to simply multiply it by 2. Okay? Now moving on to the next question. The movement of some solute across the membrane of the proximal tube of kidney is given. So P is given to you as NaCl. Your Q is given to you as H+, your R is given to you as water, and S is given to you as NH3, right? So now they have asked you the mode of transport respectively would be. Now NaCl, we know NaCl is what? NaCl is pushed against the concentration gradient. That means here the transport would be what? Here the transport is going to be active. Similarly for your H plus also the transport is what? The transport is your active, right? It is also transported actively into the lumen, right? Now coming to your water. Water is diffused, right? Through what? Through osmosis. Water goes here and there via your osmosis. Osmosis is what? Passive. And if you look at your NH3 may you see simple diffusion, right? In NH3 you see what? You see simple diffusion. So diffusion is also what? It is a type of passive transport. So your option would be active, active, passive, passive. Option number B. Okay? Now coming to the sixth question, now they've said the characteristics of flu blood vessels are given. Now if you look at P, they are saying that the blood flow is even, valves are absent, blood pressure is low, elasticity in tissue is negative. That means this is consistent with what? This is consistent with your capillaries. Right? Capillaries are what? They are very, very thin, which carry blood evenly with even pressure. They have no valves, right? They have no valve, and the pressure inside your capillaries is also very, very low, because if they are so thin walled, if you give them blood which is very high pressure, your capillaries are going to burst, right? Now coming to Q. Q, you say you have blood flow pulsatile, right? That means the blood flow is very high. Valves are again absent here. Blood pressure is high. Elasticity of the wall is very, very high. So this is in accordance to what? This is in accordance to your arteries. So this is what? This is your arteries. Okay? Arteries. Now R, if you look at R, blood flow is even. Valves are present. Now valves are present where? In your veins. And what is the function of valve? To prevent backflow of blood. Right? To prevent backflow of blood. Blood pressure is very low. That is true. Elasticity is also present. So the correct option would be P is your capillary, Q is your artery, and R is your veins. So here again, capillary, artery, vein, option number B would be my correct option. Now coming to your seventh question. In seventh question, they have asked that kidneys are important organs of excretion. Apart from excretion, they produce hormones to regulate few body functions. Which of the following sequence is correct regarding your blood pressure by kidney? Now, you know, if your blood pressure decreases, what happens? Firstly, kidneys, they'll produce what? They are going to produce your renin, right? Kidney is going to produce renin. Now, this renin enzyme, this is going to convert your angiotensinogen to your angiotensin 1, right? And where is your angiotensin 1 produced? It is produced in your liver. Then this angiotensin 1 gets converted to your angiotensin 2 by your angiotensin converting enzyme, right? And this angiotensin 2, what it does is, it will constrict your blood vessels. It will do vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction. Now, if there is vasoconstriction, that means your blood pressure is going to increase. Now, how is vasoconstriction increasing blood pressure? If you see, whenever you water, plants with a pipe, right? If the flow is very, very low, what do? You cover half of the mouth with your thumb so that you have less area or less, outlet area for your water. Then what happens? The water is released actually with more pressure. So whenever you are constricting your blood vessels, you are actually reducing the volume that is inside. So the blood has to flow a little faster. Okay? So here also, if you see, my correct option would be option number A. Blood pressure decreases, kidney produce renin, renin converts angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Angiotensin constricts your arterioles and blood pressure increases. So option A is my correct option. Coming to question number 8. Now, question number 8 simply states that which organelles a vesicle fuse to create the cell plate during cytokinesis in plants. Now, in your plant cell, alright, if this is my plant cell, these are my two nucleuses, right? You know that there are vesicles that come from your Golgi apparatus that fuse together to form your cell plate, phragmoblast, which is also called as phragmoblast. Now, this cell plate will then further extend outward, right? It is going to extend outward. So initially there is deposition of pectin, and after that you have what? After that you have cellulose. And this is done by which organelle? This is done by your Golgi apparatus. And your Golgi apparatus in plants, they are simple. So they are also called as your dictyosomes. Right? Dictyosomes are Golgi apparatus. That is why if you see in plants, whenever you are studying Golgi apparatus, you call them Golgi apparatus. But in animals, you call them as Golgi complex. So there are vesicles from these which actually fuse together. They'll form the cell plate and they'll release pectin. And then after pectin, you have cellulose that is going to deposit, and then your two cell walls actually form. So here my correct option would be option number B. Now coming to my ninth question, it says how many chromatids are there in the daughter cell that develop from meiosis II at metaphase if the somatic cell has 46 chromosomes at the beginning of interphase. So in interphase, during your interphase, 2n was how much? 2n was 46. So after your meiosis 1, N would be how much? 23. At your metaphase of meiosis 2 or metaphase 2, if you see the cell, if this is my metaphasic plate, your chromosomes, they are still in a pair. They have not yet separated. Why? Because in your metaphase 2, your sister chromatids will separate. But in your meiosis 1, your homologous chromosomes separate. Right? Your homologous chromosomes separate. Here your sister chromatids will separate. That means they are still in a pair. So if N is 23, that means the number of chromosome is 23. What is the number of chromatids? That would be 23 into 2, which is 46 chromatids. Why? Because one homologous chromosome has 2 sister chromatids. This is your chromosome and these 2 are your chromatids. So if there are 23 chromosomes, how many chromatids are you going to have? You are going to have 46 chromatids. Okay? Is this question clear? Now let's move on to your next question. Okay? 10th question. Now here if you see, in a human cell which is treated with drug X, the following type of graph are seen at the interval of 24 hours. Now initially, this is your number of cell and this is, let's say, your DNA content. Okay? This is your DNA content here. Now if you see, initially let's say you had 800 cells here, 200 cells here. Now from 2n to 4n, 2n to 4n, your DNA number increased. You see, your DNA number increased. But after your 4n, okay, your DNA, okay, this is 4n. So 2n to 4n, that means your DNA number increased. That means your cell successfully entered your S phase. So here your cell has entered your S phase, right? S phase entered. But if you see after 4n, it is not going forward. All the cells are stuck here itself. That means it is not dividing. The DNA content has doubled, but the cell is not dividing. So that means from S phase, it is not going to your M phase. So which is the phase that your drug is inhibiting? It is actually the transition from your S phase to M phase, which your drug is inhibiting. So here my correct option would be what? The drug inhibits your transition from G2 to M phase, because after S phase you will have what? You will have G2 and then you will have M. So your S to M transition that is happening, that is not going to occur here. Alright. Now coming to your question number 11. So here question number 11 says, which of the following best explains why Carl Hu's 3-domain system was revolutionary compared to the previous classified system? Now, you know, previous systems like the 5 kingdom model system, they grouped organisms mainly with the help of their morphological, nutrition and other observable traits, right? What we could see. And these were limited, and you often saw that they were, you know, there were some or the other exceptions that were present there. Now, Hu's breakthrough was that he used molecular data. Specifically, what he did was he used 16S rRNA sequence to classify your organisms. Now, this was the first time that evolutionary relationships were actually, you know, inferred from such a universal and conserved molecule, because 16S rRNA, it is found where? It is found in your ribosomes, right? Now, Wu's showed that your archaea, they are fundamentally distinct from your bacteria. That means despite being, you know, despite both being from what? Prokaryotes, even more surprising was that your archaea shared a closer evolutionary link with your eukarya, right? So his 3-domain system, that was your bacteria, archaea and eukarya, it reshaped our understanding of life, and it laid the foundation of what? It laid the foundation for molecular phylogenetics. Now if you look at the options, it was the first to categorize organism based on morphological feature. This is related to your 5 kingdom classification, right? It utilized 16S rRNA sequence analysis to reveal that archaea are more closely related to eukarya than bacteria. This option is correct, right? It proposed endosymbiotic origin of mitochondria and chloroplast. This is incorrect. And it grouped organism primarily by the mode of nutrition. This is again based on your 5 kingdom classification. Now coming on to the next question. So it says a fungal species reproduces asexually using conidia and has septate hyphae. Now, you know, if we talk about your conidia, right? If we talk about conidia, now it is given that it is reproducing how? It is reproducing asexually, right? It is reproducing how? It is reproducing asexually. Now, if your conidia, they are asexual, right? They have non-motile spores. right? And what they produce, how are they produced? They are produced externally, right, on specific structures which are called as conidiophore, right? So they are produced externally on conidiophore, right? Now this is a classic characteristic. This is a hallmark of which fungus? It is a hallmark of Ascomycota, right? So this is a hallmark of your Ascomycota. Right? Now, if you, and so we know the option is B. Now, if you talk about your septate hyphae, now your Ascomycota fungus, they typically, they specifically have hyphae that are divided by what? That are divided by septa. What is septa? That means they have a wall. If this is my hyphae, okay, here you'll have divisions. Okay, this is what? This is called as your septa, right? A wall for your fungus. Okay, so now, if you talk about your Zygomycota, it reproduces asexually but with your sporangiospore, right? Zygomycota uses sporangiospore, right? Basidiomycota, they reproduce sexually via basidiospores, right? They reproduce sexually via basidiospores. This is asexual. And your Basidiomycota, they also reproduce asexually, but it is less common, okay? Asexual reproduction is mostly it's very less common. You might have one or two exceptions, but it's mostly generally said that it is not very common, okay? Now, coming to your last one. Okay, now if I talk about your Chytridiomycota, now these produce motile spores which have flagella. Okay, zoospores. Okay, they mostly use what? They use zoospores and they are aquatic. Okay, so here my correct option would be Ascomycota. Now going to the next question. Now it says that recent studies suggest chloroplast evolution in green algae shares ancestry with land plants. Which features of your chlorophyce best supports this evolutionary link? Now we know your chlorophyce, that is your green algae, shares a link with land plants. How? Because they have chlorophyll A and B, right? Now these are the same pigments that are found in your higher plants. Now they will store starch also inside the chloroplast, specifically what? Specifically in your pyronoids, right? So why is it important? Because it has chlorophyll A and B, plus it stores starch where? In your pyronoids, right? So my D option is correct here. Okay? I think this is a more statement based question, so you need not worry much about it. Now coming to the 14th question, which says match the following. Okay, so here you have been given 4 they have asked you match the following organism with their respective plant group and identify the correct pair associated with peat formation. Now if you look at Chlamydomonas, what is Chlamydomonas? Chlamydomonas is what? It is a algae, right? Chlamydomonas is a single cell algae, right? Now, so A would be what? A would be 3. It is what? It is a single cell algae. Now, if you talk about your Cycas, Cycas is what? Cycas is a gymnosperm, right? Cycas is what? Cycas are your conifers, right? Your gymnosperms. Okay? So, your Cycas comes with 4. So, your B is 4, right? Now, your Selaginella. What is Selaginella? Selaginella is a pteridophyte, right? Selaginella is what? It is a pteridophyte, right? And your sphagnum, what is last that is less? That is your moss. So D is what? D is 1. So A is 3, B is 4, C is 2 and D is 1. So 3, 4, 2, 1. So option number A, 3, 4, 2, 1, right? Now coming to the 15th question. It says that a mutation renders complex 1 in plants mitochondria completely non-functional. Which of the following outcomes would be most accurate in describing the potential impact on oxidative phosphorylation considering unique plant mitochondria components? Now here if you see, the first option that is given here is complete arrest of electron transport and your ATS synthesis due to inability to oxidize your NADH partial continuation of electron flow through your alternative NADH dehydrogenases, but with reduced proton motive force and ATP yield, total compensation by complex 2 leading to unchanged proton gradient and ATP production, and the last is immediate switch to photosynthetic electron transport in mitochondria to bypass the block in your complex 1. I think this question is a little incomplete. So now if you talk about plant mitochondria, right, even if the complex 1 is blocked, your plants, they have a separate substitute where they can actually, continue your electron flow. Now it is not, a complete or full blown electron flow, but it is more of a partial electron flow, right? So they will have a partial electron flow through alternate NADH dehydrogenases, but with reduced proton motive force and ATP yield. Okay, so here my option number B would be correct. Okay, now coming to your 16th question. Now in 16th question they have said which of the following DNA molecule will have the highest melting temperature. Now whenever we talk about your melting temperature, always remember in melting temperatures you have to just look at which DNA sequence will have the highest GC percentage. Why? Because we know A and T, they have double bonds, and G and C, they have triple bonds. So you need extra energy to break this bond, right? You need extra energy to break this particular bond, right? Now, if you look at all these sequences, the highest GC percentage is in your D option because it is just GC, 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 GC. So your DNA sequence number D will have what? It will have the highest melting temperature because you will have to give a lot of energy to break all these triple bonds. Okay? Now coming to the 17th question. Now 17th question says colchicine drug is known to interfere with tubulin function by binding to it. What will be the effect of this drug on incubating cells in it? Now colchicine, if it is interfering with the tubulin function, now what will happen? Your spindle fiber, their formation will be inhibited because your tubulin protein, what is it doing? It is helping in spindle fiber formation, right? It is helping in your spindle fiber formation. Now, if spindle fiber formation does not happen, that means your cells, they will not go beyond your metaphase, right? So, your cells will arrest where? They are going to arrest in your metaphase. Right? I think we saw a similar question earlier also. So the cell will arrest at metaphase and ultimately what is going to happen? Your cell division will not happen. So your cell will arrest at metaphase and cell division will not occur. Now coming to the 18th question, you took a water sample from a pond, you performed a chemical analysis of water and found that the amount of silica is very high. Which of the following is not a conclusion from this result? Now if your water pond has high silica content, that means now silica is a major component of what? Of your cell wall of diatoms, right? What are they? They are your phytoplanktons. Now high silica content in pond also suggests what? That there is presence of diatoms, right? There is presence of what? There is presence of diatoms in your pond, right? Now, if diatoms, diatoms, they are what? They are primary producers in your aquatic food chain. Okay? So, they are what? They are also your primary producers in your aquatic food chain. So, their presence also in an aquatic ecosystem would be very, very important. Why? Because they are going to help in, having a well-established pot, well-established food web. So, if you see, here, but if you look at your option number C, the red dinoflagellate in here must make the ponds appear red. This is incorrect, right? This is not in conclusion with the result that we found in your pond, right? So option number C would be incorrect. Now coming to the 19th question, an autosomal recessive disorder is spread in a population considering 1,000 individuals. Out of these 1,000, 800 carry your AA gene, 185 carry your heterozygous capital A small a, and 15 carry your homozygous recessive. If this gene pool would have been in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium then. So now if your gene pool, now if you look at the options of question number 19, it says ideally the individuals carry AA genotype would have been about 96 individuals. The ideal genotypic frequency for AA would have been 15. The deviation of genotypic frequency from ideal frequency can be due to lack of random mating, and the number of alleles in the population will always remain constant. Now, if you look at this question, in Hardy-Weinberg equation, what is one thing that you're considering? That there is what? There is random mating, right? There is what? There is random mating. Now, random mating is necessary. Why? Because it needs to maintain your allelic and genotype frequencies. Okay? Now, if there are no external, factors, now Hardy-Weinberg assumes what? It assumes random mating, no selection, no mutation, no migration, and a large population size. Now, deviation from this, okay, deviation from your Hardy-Weinberg would suggest one or more assumption or one or more external factors have been violated. So, option number C would be the most viable option here. Okay, this is a simple, concept-based question. Now, coming to your 20th question. Now, this question is a little tricky. Okay. Now here if you see a 1.2 kb DNA fragment was cloned with BAM H1 and ECO-R1 sites located on 2,8 kb cloning vectors. The BAM H1 and ECO-R1 sites are adjacent to each other on the vector backbone. The vector contains a ZO1 site located 300 base pair upstream of BAM H1 site and an internal ZOL site is present in the gene sequence as shown in the figure. Now the figure is missing here, but no problem. The resultant recombinant plasmid is digested with ECO-R1 and ZOL1 and analyzed through 1% agarose gel, and we have to find the DNA fragment size. Okay. Now, if you look at your vector size, okay, if we first talk about your vector size is how much? That is 2.8 kb. Right? Your cloning vector is how much? It is 2.8 kb. Okay? And your insert is how much? My insert is around 1.2 kb, right? 1.2 kb. Okay? Now the recombinant plasmid size, if you add this, the total plasmid size is how much? It is going to be 4 kb. Now, if you look at the restriction site, your BAM H1 and your ECO-R1 are adjacent on the vector backbone. Now, the insert is cloned between them. Your ZO1 site, it is located 300 base pair upstream of BAM H1. So your ZO1 site is 300 base pair upstream of BAM H1, right? 300 base pair upstream of BAM H1, and you have an external site which is present within your insert. Now, if you digest your vector with ECO-R1 and ZO1, now ECO-R1 cuts at the end of the insert, right? And ZO1 will cut at two places. One is in the vector, right? And one is on the inside the insert, right? Now, if you calculate the fragment for your vector ZO1, right? For your ZO1 vector. Now, if you calculate the fragment size, okay, if it is 300 base pairs upstream of BAM H1, right? So 300 base pair upstream. So if you calculate ZOH1 to ECO-R1, ZOH1 to ECO-R1. Now if you calculate this will cover what? This will cover up to 700 base pairs, right? This is going to cover what? This is going to cover my 700 base pairs. Okay? It is going to cover 700 base pairs, which is vector part plus your insert. Okay? Now your internal ZO1 site. Okay? Now if I talk about my internal ZO1 site. Okay? Now my internal ZO1 site, it splits the insert, right? Giving us what? It is split the insert and it will give us around 800 base pairs. Okay? It is going to split and it is, what is it doing? It will give us another fragment of 800 base pairs. Now the remaining backbone, okay? The remaining backbone would be how much? The remaining backbone would be 2800 base pairs. Right? So what are the three fragments that you're going to see on your final gel? You will have 2800, 700 and 800 base pairs. Okay? So option number B would be the correct option here. So you will have 2008 pair, that is the leftover vector. You will have your 800 base pair, your internal ZO1 side, and your ECO-R1 side would be 700 base pairs. Okay? Now, let's look at your question number 21. So, the question says determine the correctness or otherwise of the following assertion and reason. So, the assertion is that IPTG is a gratuitous inducer of lac-operon, and the reason is that IPTG is an efficient inducer but not a substrate of lac-operon. Now, if we talk about IPTG, it mimics your lactose and it is going to bind to your lac repressor. So, what it does is your IPTG, it is going to mimic your what? It is going to mimic your lactose, right? Now, if it is mimicking your lactose, it will bind to the repressor, right? But what is going to happen is, why it is called as your gratuitous inducer. That is because it cannot be metabolized by beta galactosidase. So my IPTG can't be metabolized by beta galactosidase. Okay, it can't be metabolized by a beta galactosidase. Now, because of this, what is going to happen? It is going to remain present and it will keep your induction constant. So what it does, it will keep my induction constant, right? So here my assertion and reasoning both are going to be what? Both are going to be correct. So here my option A is correct, right? Now let's look at your 22nd question. Now what does it say? How does a somatic cell that has just completed the S phase of its cell cycle compared with respect to its number of chromosome and amount of DNA with gamete cell? Now 2n and your n. Okay, so they are asking you a comparison between your somatic cell. Now somatic cell, if you look at the chromosome number will be twice. Here my chromosome number is going to be twice, right? That you can see. And they have asked you what about the DNA content. Now DNA content in your gamete is going to be 1C. Right, it is going to be what? It is going to be 1C. But if I look at my somatic cell, which has just completed what? Just completed the S phase. There, you know, in S phase, what happens? Your DNA content doubles. So if initially in your somatic cell you had 2C content, now the content is going to be 4C. So in comparison to your gamete cells, here your DNA content is going to be 4 times. So the chromosome number is going to be twice, of course. But my DNA content is going to be what? My DNA content is going to be 4 times. So here my option C is correct. Now, coming to your 23rd question. 23rd question says that if your arabidopsis cell is undergoing fractionation, then arrange the organelle in the order of extraction. Now, if you look at the principle, of this, then the principle of this is that larger and denser organelles, they are going to settle at lower force, okay, and shorter time. So, larger and denser organelles, what they are going to do, they are going to settle, okay, they settle. How are they going to settle? At lesser time, shorter time, at lesser or shorter time, okay, and the amount of force that you are going to use, that is also going to be less. So they will have lesser force as well, okay, while your smaller ones, they need more force and they need more time. So my smaller organelles, they are going to need more force and more time, okay. Now the organelles that are given here: nuclei, mitochondria, lysosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, ribosomes and your centriole. So here what is going to be my order? First will be my nuclei, right? First is going to be my nuclei, okay. Now you see you also have chloroplast in here. So after nuclei, what is going to happen? After nuclei, you will have your chloroplast. So you have your nuclei, you will have your chloroplast. After that, what is going to happen? After that, you will have your mitochondria. Then you will have your lysosomes. After my lysosomes, you will have your endoplasmic reticulum. Why? Because they are even smaller, right? And then the smallest are your ribosomes, right? So this is going to be the correct sequence here. So option number D is going to be correct here, right? Now let's look at the 24th question, okay. 24th question says that if it takes 40 minutes for your E. coli to completely replicate, okay, simultaneously to the ongoing replication, 20 minutes of a fresh round of replication is completed before cell divides, what would be the generation time of E. coli growing at 37 degree in a complex medium? Now, what does it say? That this is your E. coli, okay? E. coli to complete an entire replication, it takes 40 minutes. But midway, that is in 20 minutes, before even the first replication has been completed, your E. coli starts your new replication, okay. So that means the generation time for a new E. coli is going to be how much? The generation time for a new coli is only 20 minutes. So here what is going to happen? 20 minutes is going to be my replication time for, because see, even though the replication is being completed here, your new generation starts at your 20 minutes point, right? So here my answer will be 20 minutes, okay? Alright. Now let's look at your next question. Now this question says that you have labeled DNA in a bacterium by flowing cells in medium containing either T or heavy isotope. Furthermore, you have isolated pure DNA from these organisms and subjected to CCl density gradient, leading to separation of light and heavy forms of DNA. Okay. ठीक है. So this is your experiment, right? So now what happens is you are growing your, so the first thing that you're doing is that you are doing growth in your 15N medium, right? First you are doing growth here in 15N medium, right? Okay, 15N medium. After that what you're doing, you are transferring this, okay, to 14N medium. You are transferring this to your 14N medium, okay, and you are allowing it to generate. Here you allow one generation. Okay, now what you're doing is you are observing. Okay, here in your 14th generation, what you're doing during your replication, you will have new strand of molecule that is going to get one old and one new strand, right? So here you have a hybrid that is formed, right? And this experiment was what? This experiment was done to prove what? That your DNA is semi-conservative in nature, right? So this experiment was proven, this experiment helped us prove that DNA is what? It is semi-conservative in nature. So here my option B is going to be, okay, option number B is going to be correct, that my DNA is semi-conservative in nature, alright? Now, let's look at the next question. Now, this question is actually a very tricky question. So, this question says that you have a 6.4 kb plasmid DNA has two restriction endonucleoside, HIND3 and EcoR1. Now, you complete double digestion of the plasmid with both the enzymes and it yields two fragments 3.1 and 3.3 kb. Okay. So, what do you have here? You have a plasmid and the plasmid size is how much? It is 6.4 kb. And when you do double digestion, I'm just writing DD here, you get two fragment sizes, okay? One is 3.1 and the other is 3.3. So, you have 3.1 and 3.3 kb, right? Now, what the question says is, in order to study the DNA repair process, a GT mismatch was introduced in one of the HIND3 sites and the damaged plasmid was incubated in a reconstituted repair system containing all factors and enzymes required for repair. If the efficiency of repair system is 50%, which of the band of the agarose gel will be obtained after the after treating the repaired one? Okay. Now, the problem is that here you have a GT mismatch. So, here you have a G and T mismatch. Okay. Now, once you have a GT mismatch, what is going to happen? This is in your HIND3 site. Okay. What is your GT mismatch? It is in your HIND3 site. Right? Repair efficiency is only 50%. Now, what does that mean? That means that it means that in half the plasmid, the mismatch will be corrected, but in the other half of the plasmid, the mismatch is not corrected, okay? So, in half plasmid, your mismatch is corrected, other half, your mismatch is not corrected, okay? That is what is meant by 50% efficiency. Now, if your repaired 50% is corrected and it is cut, right? If your repaired is corrected and it is cut, then what is going to happen? Then you will have your 3.1 and 3.3 kb, right? You are going to have these two bands if it is corrected, right? If the sequence is correct. But if it is not repaired, that means what? You will only have your EcoR1 site, right? You are going to have only your EcoR1 site, okay? So, that means your HIND3 site will be gone. So, if not repaired, my HIND3 site, that will be gone. What will happen if my HIND3 site is gone? That means I will not get these two fragment sizes, right? That means only EcoR1 will cut. So, in your uncut plasmid, right, in your uncut plasmid, now what is going to be there? You will have your 6.4 kb plasmid and you will have your 3.3 kb EcoR1 site, right? So, only your 50%, since your repair is only 50%, you will get what? You are going to get a mix, right? You are going to get a mix of 6.4 also. You are going to get a mix of 3.1 and you are going to get a mix of 3.3, right? You are going to get a mix of all these fragments. Why? Because if your fragment is unrepaired, then your hind is not going to cut. And if it is not cutting, that means you will not have two fragments. In that case, you will have only one fragment, right? Only a linearized plasmid is going to be there, right? And when you are double digesting it, right? When you are double digesting it, you are getting two fragments, right? So that means what? That means what is going to happen? Now here if you see, what is your both C and your option number D, right? Your both option C and both option D are actually the same only, I think here, right? So here if you see, they both are showing what? They both are showing the same band. So here either C or D, both are going to be the correct option here. Okay? This is clear? Now, let's move on to the next question. A single stem cell undergoes 10 asymmetrical division, the number of stem cells at the end. Now you see your stem cells, they always divide asymmetrically, right? If this is my stem cell, it is going to divide into what? Into a cell that will differentiate and one cell that is going to retain the stem cell like property. And no matter how many times you divide it, okay, at the end you are going to have only one stem cell that is going to remain. Why? Because it will keep dividing asymmetrically and the other cell will differentiate into a different cell and one cell type is going to remain a stem cell. So what is the number of stem cells at the end? It is going to be 1 always. It is going to be 1 always, because your stem cells, they always divide how? They are always going to divide asymmetrically. Okay. Now, coming to the next question, sperm has several components. The function of acrosome is. Now, your acrosome is known as your sperm's toolbox, right? It has a cap-like structure at the tip of the sperm head and inside it, it has hydrolytic enzymes, right? So, acrosome, it has what? It has your hydrolytic enzymes. Now, because it has your hydrolytic enzymes, what is going to happen? It can easily, what it can do is, now this enzyme will be released during your acrosome reaction and it is going to help break the outer protective layer of your ovum, that is your zona pellucida, so that the sperm can penetrate and fertilize the egg. So here my correct option would be what? Here my correct option would be option number C. Okay. Now, coming to your 29th question, right? So my 28th question was the one we just did, sorry. Okay, so now in 29th question says sickle cell anemia is a disease still very prevalent in African countries, because specific genotypes of the population have better immunity against malaria than others. Within this context, answer the following question. Suppose 9% of African people are born with severe form of sickle cell anemia. What percentage will be more resistant to malaria? Okay, if it is in Hardy-Weinberg. Now, this 9% is what? Now, you know, AA is going to be normal. Your SS, that is your severe sickle cell, right? That is going to be your recessive. Q square, that is going to be your recessive trait. Your AA is going to be your P square, right? And your AS, that is your heterozygous, right? That is your heterozygous, okay? Which is going to be what? Which is going to be actually the one that is going to be resistant to malaria. Okay? So now they have said 9%. Now they have not given us the total number of population. So we are going to consider it as what? We are going to consider it as 100 only, right? So it is 9 upon 100, which is 0.09. Now if you want to calculate Q, Q will be how much? You under root this, that is 0.3. Right? Now, according to Hardy-Weinberg, we know P plus Q is equal to 1. Now, if our if our Q is 1, that means our P is going to be how much? Our P is going to be 0.7. It is going to be 0.7. Now, if it is 0.7, that means my P square will be how much? My P square, if I have to calculate it in percentage, right? If I have to calculate it in terms of allelic frequency, the recombinant frequency, it will be 49%. And my 2PQ, that is going to be 2 into 0.3 into 0.7, that is going to be how much? 0.42, right? And if I want to find the number of individuals, I multiply it with the population, that means 42 individuals. So here my option number D is going to be correct. Option number D, right? Now coming to your 30th question. Now it says that founder effect creates a gene pool that differs from parental population because. Why? Because in founder effects, what is happening? You have an initial population. From here, a small segment of population is going to actually form now a new population. Right? Now this population has more homozygosity initially, right? And less heterozygosity. But what will happen? You will have immigration also, right? You are going to have emigration also. So here ultimately the gene pool will slowly change, right? The gene pool here is slowly going to do what? It is going to change. So if you look at it, small number of colonizing individual quickly lose rare alleles. This is incorrect. Small number of colonizing individual is unlikely to be representative of the parental population. This is correct because they are forming a new population now. The small number of colonizing individuals are not joined by later migrants. This is incorrect because we have immigration and emigration. Small number of colonizing individuals are poorly adapted to new habitat. This is also incorrect. So here my correct option would be option number B. Okay, so let's start with your question number 31. So the question number 31 says that the immediate energy source that drives ATP synthesis by ATP synthase during a oxidative phosphorylation. So what is this? This is the electron flow that happens through your electron transport chain, right? The flow of electrons that is happening down your ETC, that is the immediate source that will drive ATP synthesis by your ATP synthase. So here my option number B is going to be correct. Now coming to question number 32. Question number 32 says that select the incorrect statement with respect to plant hormones. So the first one says that apical dominance is under the control of sugar and various plant hormones like auxin, cytokinin and strigogalactones. The sugar demands of the shoot tip is critical for maintaining apical dominance. This is correct. ABBA plays an important role in stress response like drought and flood conditions and inhibits the dormancy of seed. Now this statement is incorrect because it promotes the dormancy of seed. It will never inhibit. So this is option number B. Now coming to your question number 33. Now it says that which entry in the table is wrongly marked. Right? So now what you have to do, you have to tell which entry is wrongly marked. Unfortunately, the answer is already mentioned. But let's try and solve it, right? So statin lowers your blood sugar. It is from Monascus purpureus. Your streptococcus from streptokinase. It removes your blood clot. This is also correct. Your Clostridium botulinum product is not lipases. The product is butyric acid and acetone butanol fermentation, right? So it is what? It is your butyric acid, right? And what does it help in? It helps in our fermentation, right? So option number C is incorrect and then D again is correct, right? Now coming to your question, next question. Now in the given graph, curve A, B and C represent the relationship between partial pressure of oxygen and saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen. Now if the curve A represents, this is your regular artery, right? This is your regular artery. That means it is going to have your oxygenated blood. It is going to have your oxygenated blood. Now again, if you look at B, B has a lower oxygen saturation, right? It has a lower hemoglobin saturation, but the affinity for your C is going to be higher, right? So now curve C represents blood in right ventricle. Now we know right ventricle carries what? It carries your deoxygenated blood. If you look at the structure of heart, let's say this is your heart. This is your right atrium, this is your left atrium, this is your right ventricle, this is your left ventricle. This entire region will have your oxygenated blood and this entire region will have your deoxygenated blood, right? So this statement is incorrect. Curve C represents bloods in left ventricle. So C can represent blood in left ventricle because it is oxygenated, right? So my B option here is correct. Now coming to your 35th question, it says which part of the human brain regulates the respiratory rhythm? We know that medulla oblongata has what? It has your respiratory rhythm center, which is primarily responsible for what? It is primarily responsible for your respiration, right? Now coming to question number 36. Okay, so question number 36, what does it state? It states that ancestral relationship has been observed in proteins like hemoglobin, myoglobin and leg hemoglobin are very similar in structure. So here what do they have? They have same structure, but they perform different function. But the function that is different, right? Now we know this is a classic example of what? This is a classic example of homologous organs, and homologous organs are found where? Homologous organs are found in your divergent evolution, right? Homologous organs are found in your divergent evolution. right? So what is divergent evolution? When you have a population that is migrating within the same geographical area, because they are in this, they were initially in the same place, they have same structure, but now they are going to different geographical areas. That is why they are going to perform different function, and the simplest trick to remember is remember the term HD, right? Homologous and divergent. So here both homology and divergent evolution, so option number D will be correct. Now coming to question number 37. Question number 37 says that the hormone that is responsible for maintaining the BMR, that is basal body rate, we know that hormone is thyroxine, right? What hormone is that? It is thyroxine. And how does it do it? It is going to do it with the help of your thermionic effect, right? Your thyroxine does what? It has a thermionic effect, because of which it is going to help in your metabolism of carbohydrates, fats, etc., and maintain your basal metabolic rate. Coming to question number 38, it says in a population of 1000 moths before industrialization, 200 pepper moth, 800 white moths were present. So initially you had 200 pepper moth and 800 white ones. And after industrialization, a survey conducted, out of 800 moths, 500 were peppered and 300 were white. So initially what happened? Initially, let's say if this was my graph, now the graph has shifted more towards your peppered moth, right? Now the graph shifted more towards what? It shifted more towards your peppered moth, right? So they have asked us that what is the correct, what is the correct kind of selection happening before and after. Before it was also directional. Why? Because out of 1000 you had only 200 peppered, right? And you had 800 white moths. But after industrialization, what happened? After industrialization also you had 500 that were peppered and you had around 300 that were white. So initially your natural selection favored white moths, so it shifted more towards one trait, and after industrialization again it is shifting to another trait, so it is again favoring, so it is directional in both cases. Coming to your 39th question, Darwin finches developed various types of beak on the basis of eating habit. Now we know Darwin finches, initially they were all seed eaters, and after some time this became frugivores, right? They became frugivores, they became insectivores, they became woodpeckers, they became even cactus eaters, right? So this was an example of what? This was an example of adaptive radiation also, right? And it was an example of what? It was an example of your divergent evolution also, right? It was an example of your divergent evolution also. So here both A and C are going to be correct. Now question number 40. So here you have to fill in the blank, okay? So question number 40 says inulin is a polymer of, we know inulin is a polymer of what? Is a polymer of fructose, right? Now palmitic acid has dash number of carbons, excluding your carboxyl carbon. Now palmitic acid has 16 carbons. If you are excluding your carboxyl carbon, so that is going to make it 15, right? Now to know the inorganic compound found in living, you perform the Ash analysis test. Dash has 20 number of carbon, including, that is your arachidonic acid. Okay, that is your arachidonic acid, right? This is all from your biomolecule. So here my correct option would be option number D, right? Correct option is option number D, okay? Now coming to your question number 41, it says you have to match the following, right? So now saturated fatty acids are what? My saturated fatty acids are the ones which have no double bond, okay? So A is 3, right? Now they have said peptides. Peptides are what? Peptides, if you look at it, they bound linking amino acids in proteins. So B is 4, okay? C, coenzymes. Coenzymes are what? They are essential for enzyme activities, and monosaccharides are what? They are simple sugars like glucose. So option number A is correct. Now coming to the next question, right? So this is from your enzyme kinematics, right? So now this says that an enzyme catalyzes the conversion. An enzyme is catalyzing the conversion of a substrate S to product in absence of an inhibitor. Now the enzyme shows Km of 5 and a Vmax of 100. When a competitive inhibitor is added, the apparent Km increases and the Vmax remain constant. Why? Because initially if you needed 2 molecules to saturate the enzyme, now you have an inhibitor, competitive, which is going to compete for the same active site, right? So here what you need to do is you need to increase the substrate concentration to now saturate your enzyme. So your Km is going to increase, however your Vmax in your competitive inhibitors does not change, right? So here if you look at the options, option number 2 is the correct option. The inhibitor competes with the substrate for active site, requiring more substrate to reach half the maximum velocity. Now, coming to your next question, that is question number 43. Okay. So first, if you look at your drugs, right? So out of all this, out of all the options given in column 2, what are your drugs? Your drugs are your vinblastine and curcumin, right? So P is 3. Right? Toxins. What are your toxins? Your toxins are arbin and ricin, right? Your toxins are what? They are your arbin and ricin. Coming to lectins, right? Now, out of all the options given, what is lectin? Lectin is your concanavalin A and your alkaloid is codeine. So, here my option would be P is 3, Q is 4, my R is 2, and my S is 1. So, option number C, right? Option number C here is the correct option. Okay. Now, moving on to the next question. Which of the following is denoted by X and Y? Now, if you see X, this is what? This is your activation energy after you add an enzyme. After you add an enzyme. And Y is what? It is the activation energy without enzyme. Right? It is the activation energy without enzyme. We know enzyme, it does what? Enzyme reduces the activation energy, but it will not change your enzyme kinematics. So here if you see, your option number B is correct. Okay. Now the next question. Again you have a fill in the blank paragraph, right? Prosthetic groups are what? Prosthetic groups are inorganic, right? Prosthetic groups are inorganic. Now, prosthetic groups are inorganic and are distinguished from other cofactors in that way that they are dashed to the apoenzyme. Now, how are they bound? They are tightly bound to your apoenzyme. They are tightly bound to your apoenzyme, right? Example in peroxidase and dash, which catalyzes the breakdown of hydrogen peroxide. That is your, what is the other enzyme? It is your isomerase. Right? It is what? It is your isomerase into water and hydrogen, right? Dash is the prosthetic group. What is the prosthetic group here? Heme is the prosthetic group here, right? So here my option number C is correct, right? Option number C is correct. Now, here it says that a cell suspension of activity respiring mitochondria is treated with either chemical X, Y or left untreated. Now, okay, now if you see in chemical X, okay, selectively inhibits the electron transport to complex 1 to ubiquinone, while chemical Y selectively inhibits electron transport from complex 3 to cytokinin C. Which of the following represents the correct order relative number of ATP synthesis in your mitochondria? Now, if you look at your chemical X, it is blocking your electron transport from complex 1 to ubiquinone. Okay? This means your NADH electrons cannot enter your chain, right? But your electrons from FADH, right, via your complex 2 can still pass. Okay, it can still pass. Here your ATP yield will be reduced, but it will not be 0. Chemical Y, it is blocking your transport from complex 3 to cytochrome C. This will halt the chain completely. Why? Because your electrons cannot move beyond complex 3 regardless whether they came from your NADH or FADH. So here what is going to happen? It will stop your ATP synthesis essentially, right? And your experiment 3 is untreated. That means it is going to remain what? It is going to remain normal and you will have your maximum energy yield. So ATP synthesis relatively 2 will have the lowest, 3 is going to be the highest and 1 is going to be reduced, but it will be greater than 0, right? So here my correct option would be what? Option number A. Okay? Right. Now moving on to next, question number 47. Which of the following statement about meiosis in sexually reproducing plants is incorrect? Okay. So the first question is end product of meiosis 2 are haploid gamete. Now this statement is itself incorrect because gametes are never formed in plants, right? They form what? They can form your pollens, right? So this first statement itself is incorrect. Now let's look at the other statement. 4 products of meiosis are genetically different. Your meiotic recombination takes place in both males and females. This is also correct. Most flowering plants, only one of the 4 products meiosis survives in female. This is also correct. Coming to your 48th question. Now this is a numerical that is related to your polymerase chain reaction, right? PCR. Now here it says that if after, used to amplify a gene of interest, if after 30 cycles of PCR, 1 billion copies are produced, approximately how many copies of your gene of interest were present at the end of your 20th cycle? Now, if you want to see the copies after 30th cycle, right, that was 1 billion, but you can also write it as copies after 20 cycle into 2 to the power 10, right? You can also write it as copies after 20 cycles into 2 to the power 30 minus 20, right? Now this is what? This is 1 billion. And this is going to be what? This is going to be x into 2 to the power 10, right? This is going to be x 2 to the power 10. Now when you solve for x, x will come out to be as 1 million. When you solve for x here only, if you see, x is going to come out to be 1 million. So option number A would be correct here, right? Now, next question is, which of the following is an example of genetic diversity? Variation in the potency and concentration of Rasparin produced by Rauwolfia vomitoria, high diversity of amphibians in your Western Ghats than in your Eastern Ghats, greater variation in your ecosystem found in India than in Scandinavia, the greater diversity of plant found in India compared to Central Asia. Now, if you see the first one is an example of genetic diversity. This is your genetic diversity. The second one, right? The second one is what? Second one where you have more, diversity than your Western Ghats. This is your species diversity. This is an example of species diversity, right? Next, greater variation of ecosystem found in India. This is again your ecosystem diversity. This is an example of ecosystem diversity. And last one, this is again your species diversity. So genetic diversity, only the first option is correct, right? Okay. Coming to your last question, it says some individuals start sneezing when pollen content is high in the air, primarily the IgE isotype. Now we know for allergies, what is the IgE responsible? That is IgE. So here my option number A is going to be correct. This was your direct question. So these were some of the important questions for your IIT exam. I hope you found them helpful and I wish you all the best for your preparation.